Hi everyone, so I just wanted to give you a quick update of where we are in the higher database unit. Okay, we have already covered analysis. If we have a little look at design, you can see that we've looked at entity relationship diagrams with regards to all of these different parts. We've looked at entity occurrence diagrams. I've given you the information on compound keys, but I will add that to a future lesson so you can see it properly. We did data dictionaries last week, and now we're going to be finishing off the design unit by having a little look at query designs. Now you will have come across query designs already at National 5, understanding that you pull information from tables and queries based on specific fields, search criteria, and you probably added some sorts, ascending and descending, maybe just simple sorts from National 5. What we're going to be doing is looking at complex sorts for higher and also going to be adding in some calculations and groupings. Okay, so this is what we're kind of focusing on for this part of the week. Now, there's a really good appendix that's been provided by the SQA that's got information on all of the different types of queries, all the different types of calculations, all the different types of wildcards you might be able to use as part of your queries. And it's all built into the appendix. So I'm not going to talk through all of it, but we will cover it at the tutorial on Monday if anyone does want to look at it in a little bit more depth. Okay, now all of the appendix is still based around the travel agency database, which you should have quite a good understanding of nowadays. These screenshots that you'll see throughout this week's task and the appendixes are just from Access to show you what that looks like. Now at the moment we're not going to be using Access just because there's a number of people who don't have it working. We're going to focus on the theory side of the course because actually, if needs be, we don't have to do the practical part in our assignment later in the year if we run out of time. But hopefully if we get back to the school, we can have a little go at having done some of this in Access. Okay, so at higher level, we need to be able to understand what fields or computed values are required to meet a query's needs. Okay, which tables or queries that information has to come from, because sometimes you're going to have subqueries, so maybe two queries referring back to another one. What search criteria needs to be applied? That's straight from National 5. So what are you actually looking for? And that could be complex, it could be multiple things you're looking for. If grouping needs to be applied, and that's usually based on if there is any computed values or calculations. And then lastly, if you're going to add any sorts of sorts, simple or complex, and which order the sorts are going to be in, ascending or descending. Okay, now if we go down, basically it's got examples from 1 all the way down to about 12, and they get more and more complex. So they start off pretty easy and then get more and more complex. You will also have access to your appendix from last year at National 5 if you want to go back and recap. And the questions that I've set you this week have some National 5 recap questions first, all with examples, before they lead on to the higher questions. Okay, so don't worry, there's everything there to help you with it. So starting off from the top here, a number of things. You can see that on the left hand side our query designs have expanded now. So as well as having fields and calculations, table queries, search criteria, we've now got grouping and grouping being added in. Okay, and sort order was obviously there before, okay, but the grouping is extra because it links in with the calculations, which are extra as well. All right, and in this example you can see we're being asked to search for the name and if something has a swimming pool and which resort name and resort type is it from, to be able to find out. And we're looking for coastal resorts that start with the letter A, so that's why we need the names and we need the types in there to be able to search for that information. So we start off by listing the fields that we need. No calculations just now, just fields, so we've got them all of our attributes. And then in the tables or entities section we need both hotel and resort, because the name of the hotel you're looking for is going to be in the hotel field, as well as if it has a swimming pool or not, whereas resort name and resort type is going to come from the resort. Now these two tables link directly. We know that hotel had a foreign key for resort and they link. If they didn't and they had a table between them, you would need to have all three tables in there. So watch out for that when you're looking at some of your further query designs. Okay, in here you can see search criteria. We're looking for coastal under resort type. Again, this should be listed out just as you see the attribute names, so no spaces. If you've used camel case, then working the same way as you did in your entity relationship diagrams. And resort name is like a percentage sign. Now, like means it's not going to be exactly equal to, so we can't use an equal sign. If you had the whole hotel name, then absolutely you can put equals in there. What the percentage sign is a wild card, okay? And what that does is allows you to have anything after the A that might be used. Okay, so percentage sign is anything after the A. Sometimes you can see a star being used, but star tends to be used if you want to use everything, whereas percentage sign is saying anything after an A, so anything that starts with an A. Okay, If we have a look at the second one, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to point out some important things to you. In the second one, you can see that we're looking for H as the second letter of a surname. A very bizarre search, but at least it shows you what it looks like, okay? Now, when we're putting that into our search criteria, this is what it looks like. So we've got our like, we've got an underscore, and then a percentage sign. Now, those are both examples of wildcards, but what the underscore does is it only allows one letter. So if we had percentage sign H percentage sign, what that would do is it would allow us to select anyone who had a H anywhere in their name. Okay, whereas that this does is says there's one letter, then there's a H, and then there's as many letters as you like. If you wanted a 3-letter word that had H as the middle letter, it would be underscore H and then underscore. Now again, they're not mostly used for things like names, but what they might be used for is codes. So if you have like your hotel code, for example, being AY12, and you've got FY12, you've got LY12, maybe you want to search for anything that's got that Y as the second letter, you could use it as that. So you'd have underscore Y underscore underscore for a 4-letter code. Okay, so there's different ways you can use that to make it work. Now, as we start to go down, you can see that in some of the examples, you have got these kind of calculations, which are very differently laid out to our normal fields or attributes that we would add from National 5. Now, at higher, there's a number of calculations we need to know about: sum, min, max, and count. Okay, quite similar to how we would do our some of our stuff in programming. Okay, so what max does, if it's not obvious, is finds the highest value. So this would find the highest price per night, and min would find the lowest price per night. Now, what this bit at the beginning does, the cheapest price per night, is creates a nice table heading. So when you actually do that search in a database, it comes back saying cheapest price per night, and then underneath it would have listed the minimum cost, hopefully saved in a currency format perhaps, so it's displayed nicely inside your database. Okay, if you don't put anything in here, this will still work, but it isn't obvious to the user which one's which or what it is you're actually doing, unless you've just created the query, in which case obviously you know what it's meant to do, but it isn't useful for people using it in the future. So you have to think about your design in these databases for people to use on a day-to-day basis. So if they're searching for the highest or the lowest price, they want to be able to do that really quickly by clicking on a button, and what we're doing is design the query that would go behind these buttons to get them to actually work. Okay, you can see an example down here of where a calculation has been used, but it hasn't been given this name at the beginning, so that would just come up as a number, an average number of nights where somebody's stored and then they're booking, and it wouldn't say anything. Maybe if you had a button design that said click here to find out your average number of nights, and then you clicked it and it just came up with a number, that would make sense. But you can have it either or, so both layouts will work, okay, correctly. If we go over the page, I just wanted to very quickly show you what a count looks like. So in this example, it's saying design a query to display a list of the different types of resorts together with the number of resorts in each of those categories. Okay, so it's wanting you to do a count. So it's saying how many times does the resort ID appear in specific different hotels to work out how many hotels are in with each resort. That makes sense, right? So we need the resort types. We're going to count how many resort types there are. Okay, we're going to sorry, I've done that wrong. It's the number of resorts in each category. So it's how many coastal resorts there are, how many spa resorts, how many golf resorts, etc. Right? So we're counting how many times each resort comes up. We're searching only on the resort table, but what we've had to add is grouping. Now, what grouping does is stops duplication in your output. So if you were to count, let's say there was 5 spa resorts, 3 golf resorts, and 10 coastal resorts. Okay, what would happen is it would actually say golf 3, golf 3, golf 3 times, and if there was 5 spa resorts, it would say spa 5, spa 5, spa 5, spa, because it actually displays it every time it counts it. It's very, very weird, the output. So what you have to do is put in this grouping, and what grouping does is if you group by resort type, each resort type will only appear once. So it would end up saying golf 3, spa 5, coastal 10, and then list any other resort types with their numbers. Okay, so whenever you're using a count, okay, and you can usually spot the calculations really easy because they've got this capital letters, right? Whenever you use a count, you're going to apply a grouping. That's the way to remember it. Okay, and you're usually grouping it on whatever it is you're actually counting. So here we're counting resorts within resort types, so we group it by resort type, so each resort type only comes up once. Okay, down here you can see that you can still apply a name to a count, so that it actually comes up with a name at the top of the column heading. So this time we're counting the number of hotels inside the resorts that have been booked. Okay, so we need bookings, we need hotels, we need resorts. We're checking how many of them are coastal, because it's only coastal ones we're looking for. And you can see, because we've done a count, we're still trying to group it by resort type in this one. Now, what I want to say is this can be quite complex, but they just are got loads and loads of examples, which are really good, and you can always refer to them. In the questions that I've issued this week, they've got 1 to 12 appendix. It's basically just these in the examples in the worksheet I've given you. And after each one, it just asks you to complete a design of a similar complexity. So it shouldn't be very difficult to each one that you do, just to practice the layouts. And what we'll do later in the week is I'll give you an example, or later in the unit, is I'll give you an example of one to do for the game rentals table. And you can see if you can just consolidate that learning a little bit. Okay, now one thing I want to show you before I head off is there's a really good example here of how you could search for a date, again just using the wildcards. You could put 2 underscores there and then 2 or 4 underscores at the end, but just having the wildcard allows it to accept anyway. You can see there's a wee use of the sum function. But I wanted to go down and show you examples of queries 12, because query 12 is the most complex type of query that you would get asked about at higher level. So you can see here it says, design a query to display details of any hotel with a price per person that is below the average price per person. The query should display the hotel name, the star rating, the meal plan, and the price per night. So basically there's an average price per person and you're looking for cheaper hotels, okay? And it's telling you what information to store. It then says you want to sort the dearest hotel so that one's listed first. So you're kind of looking for cheaper hotels, but you want the best of the cheaper hotels. Now the solution requires 2 separate queries. So first of all, we need to find out what the average price per night is. Then we have to use that as part of the second query. So this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated, okay? Now, there's a couple of things that are important here. You're always going to have 2 tables. So when you get asked a question like this, you'll have space for 2 answers, okay? The name of your first query here is really important, because you're going to have to refer to that when you are referring to, in your second query, what the average is. You need to refer to that name. So it's really important that you remember what that is, okay? So the first one's just finding out average price per person £. So that's giving it a nice name. And then it's got the average price person night. So we've got one field that stores the night. So it's really easy to find the average. And that's in the hotel folder, or the hotel table. Okay, so we've just found that out really quickly. Then if we go down to the second query, this is where it gets more complicated. So our fields are what we want to be displayed. Now, interestingly, you don't actually have to display anything that was in the first table, because all we're asked, if you look at the question, it was display hotel name, star rating, meal plan, price per night. So that's the 4 things that are listed in here, obviously with the proper names that come from the attributes in your entity, in your database. Yeah, so price, person, night has got the the camel case and it all works together. I don't know why it's a capital I, that's a wee mistake, but anyway. So those are the 4 you need. Then you're pulling that information from the hotel table, because hotel name, star rating, meal plan, price, person, night are in the hotel table, but you also need the find average per person query. Now you can see that we can see very quickly that it's a query because it's in these square brackets, okay? And this is why we've got tables and queries listed here, right? So square brackets means that's how we access this query above. And then when we do the search criteria, we want the price person night to be equal to the average price per person £. Now, can you imagine where this comes from? This average price per person? It comes from here. Okay, so that's why we've given this nice name to this attribute, so we can refer to it down here. Okay, just want to check something. Did it say that is below? I think that should be less than or equal to. I don't know. It came from the SQA, but that says below the average price person night, so I think that should technically be less than rather than an equals to. Anyway, then your sort order price person night in descending order. So with numbers, descending puts the highest down to the lowest. If you were doing it in alphabetical order, you would want ascending on a text field. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. There is lots of examples in the work to help you, and again, we can go over the tutorials next week if you require any help, or we're on Satchel 1 if you need anything in the meantime. Okay, speak to you soon, guys. Bye.